I, Shalini Shaha, will be your host for this evening for the first panel session of E-Engage 2020. The topic of the session is Tackling Image During COVID-19 Times. As we move on to introducing the moderator for today's session, Ms. Rita Bhimani. Ms. Rita Bhimani, founder of Rhythm Communications, is a moderator for the first panel. Rita Bhimani is one of the iconic figures in corporate public relations who has given the profession of considerable degree of credibility. She completes 5 decades of commitment to the profession of PR this year. She is the founder CEO of Rhythm Communications, an independent PR consultancy firm. She's made a mark nationally and internationally in her field when she was elected to the board of directors of the prestigious International PR Association. Her book on PR, titled PR 2020, The Trending Practice of Public Relations, has made considerable waves with students, and another one on the revival of Muga was launched a few days ago. So 5 books to her credit, apart from the teaching and mentoring of students through the 3-year degree course in media science. She is a versatile columnist and anchor person for a range of industrial needs and literary readings, and a soft skill trainer. She has produced a documentary on Raja Ram Mohan Roy. While she is the recipient of several prestigious awards, this evening she has given her own set of awards to meritorious students. Welcome, ma'am, to E-Engage 2020. I would now like to introduce you and hand over the session to you for the rest of the evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shalini. So shall I start? Are we ready to start?
I think we are ready. Is it?
So
Sure, ma'am. I think
let me start this whole evening.
Absolutely.
Over to me?
Absolutely. Over to you. Please take the stage.
Oh, that's great, right? So good evening to you and good evening to all my panelists. And let me start by saying that since there's so much cricket happening around us, there are Dream 11 teams that many enthusiasts have been having fun with, and I'm sure you're aware of all this. So, keeping this analogy in the forefront, I'm pleased to announce my own dream foursome team of panelists. They're all people who have taken their professional work to amazing heights, excelling beyond themselves. And I personally have had the privilege of interacting with them over many decades. So, in introducing them, you might find me going a little over the top, but I think they deserve that particular uh, extra that I would like to say about them. First off, Sukhanti Ghosh. We go back 27 years actually, when he appeared at the perfect time when I was looking for a researcher for my book, my first book on public relations called The Corporate Peacock. So he turned out to be a gold medalist in PR, a vocal assistant, an intelligent critic, and a great, great sounding board. And then this peacock spread his plumes as he went on to creating PR divisions of many ad agencies in India. And then his journey went beyond frontiers. He went on to build and manage corporate and product brands in the banking and financial services industry across the Middle East and South Asia. And then he led the Indian operations of APCO Worldwide, moving to Texas, and is now Senior Vice President and lead South Asia practice Albright Stonebridge Group. The Albright Stonebridge Group, by the way, uh, takes its name from Madeleine Albright, a name that we have all contended with. It's a global strategic advisory firm, but we'll come to more of that. I think we'd like to see a little AV about Sukhanti Ghosh.
Good evening, Rita, and good evening, everybody. Lots of fun memories there over the last 27 years. I'm delighted to be as part of the show, and delighted to be part of this panel.
Thank you. It's a strange time of day for you, but there you are with us.
Absolutely, and for everyone who's watching, Rita and I, and yes, I will, continue to call her Rita, so get used to it if you're not. But the fact is that I 2 days ago, I suddenly saw her name flash on my phone, and I was in the middle of a lot of meetings, and I dropped everything, and we chatted for an hour, and it didn't really matter because there are some bonds that are really, really special in your life. This is one of them. I'm delighted to be here, delighted to be a part of the panel, and delighted to share whatever information I can that will help everyone in their journey. So thanks for having me here.
Thank you so much, Sukhanti. Next up, I would like to introduce Professor Ujjwal Chaudhary, Pro Vice Chancellor, Adamas University of Kolkata. It's a global education destination spread over 140 acres and ranked number one in Eastern India. Ujjwal, or Professor Ujjwal, may I call you that, but Ujjwal is what I've always called you. He has been flying high from the very first time I knew him as the Dean of Media at Symbiosis, the go-to place for communication hopefuls, and he himself was the go-to personality. I followed his career as he seamlessly moved to Amity, followed by the famous Whistling Woods, and then the Pearl Academy set up in different locations. He's a tremendous orator and administrator, and we love him for his convergent approach to media education, starting from an integrated broad base, leading to focused specialization at the top. We also admire his forthright and focused views in the electronic and print media. Can we take a look at it once, either at the AV that might play or uh, Ujjwal in person?
Nice to see you, Rita ji.
Namaskar. Good evening,
Good
Ujjwal. We
good
have
evening.
been in touch with each other over the decades. You have invited us to your various seminars, and there's also other family connects when you've
Yes,
also tutored my daughter-in-law. So there's lots of things that we have, and as you know, I followed your career right through and through,
thank you.
and
Thank
I'm
you.
sure you have mine too.
Your family epitomizes communication in its very myriad forms, actually. All of you.
Yes, of course. My son said hello to you. He said that I'm so glad UKC is on the panel.
Thank you.
And just for everyone's benefit, Ujjwal and I have been friends for the last close
20
close to
years,
the last 25
30 years,
years.
35 years, right? 35 years.
So we go
35.
back a long way as well.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And of course, with Sukhanti, I again reconnected with him a couple of years ago when I was in the States. And my grandniece said that he was actually uh, her mentor and she was interning with him at this company. And she mentioned the name Sukhanti Ghosh. I said, there's only one such name. I was really excited when she came back and told me all about Sukhanti. So everywhere there's lots and lots of connects. I now move on to another person whom I've known for at least a couple of decades, and that is Dr. Mahol Brahma. He's a double doctorate, first in economics, and now he's actually been conferred an honorary Doctor of Letters in Luxury and Communication from the California Public University. Mahul started out for us as a top journalist, both to be feared and also to be cultivated. And then the corporate world beckoned him into its arms, doing corporate communications and branding for two major business groups before he came to his present head as CSR, corporate communications, branding, and publications at M Junction. As a commentator columnist on luxury brands, he has published this amazing series, a series of 3 books, the Lux Trilogy. And there's also a 5th book in the making, so relevant for all of us on how to communicate strategically in the corporate world. It's full of sunshine stories, something I think that we need in pandemic times. Can we see you also? And here.
Thank you, Ritadi. It's and thank you, Sukhanti and Ujjalda. It's such a pleasure to be on the same panel with all the people that I like. And Ritadi has been like, she's like a mentor, and she's the loveliest and such a beautiful person. And, I just can't stop talking about her when she's around. So, it's just such a pleasure that, we are on the same panel and such a hugely respected persona in the PR world. So I'm really honored, Ritadi, that, we are in the same panel.
Thank you so much. What an amazing dream panel, as I said. I couldn't ask for better people to be on it and to talk about something so relevant today on how we are getting on and trying to communicate during the pandemic despite all the difficulties. Perhaps it's a big opportunity for everybody. Perhaps things have actually shown an upward graph as far as communication during the pandemic is concerned. But we'll come to that. I have one more panelist who is Gary Gupta, joining us all the way from New Zealand, where he has dropped anchor since 2009. He has had a heads up start in his career in the film industry. And now he has his own marketing agency, Media Solutions, which actually provides solutions to SMEs by using various digital media, marketing tools, and events as well. He has spun off big community events like the Kiwi Indian Hall of Fame and Bollywood mega events like the Shah Rukh Khan show and the A.R. Rahman concert. And there are many opportunities in India for us to connect through the India-New Zealand Business Council, of which he is secretary. I think we might just take advantage of this new link that we have with New Zealand to be able to do this. So Gary Gupta gets a look in first, as we have already had a one-on-one pre-recording of what we want to hear from him from a country that has conquered the COVID-19, so to say. And we had this one-on-one because timings again are very, very different in New Zealand. So here we are with Gary Gupta. Now, I'd like to kick off with my first question to you, which is that you have actually straddled both worlds. First, the Indian scenario as an initial knowledge and experience base, and now with your being firmly ensconced in New Zealand as a marketing and communications consultant with your own media solutions company.
Yeah.
So, in a way, we can say that it's given you an additional edge in finding macro solutions to brand building. Has it done so?
Yeah, definitely. Our my Indian background has helped, because I still work largely under the Indian diaspora here, and a lot of Kiwi businesses who have either Indian ownership or Indian partners. So that definitely has played a vital role in creating some unique solutions for my clients, which have a little bit of an Indian ethos, and also working operationally, how the Kiwi market works.
So, let me ask you for one or two examples. When we had earlier discussed this, and today we are on live
Yeah,
about the childcare centers or the
yeah,
legal firms that you
yeah,
worked with, or
yeah.
a non-profit organization. So, quickly take us through a couple of examples.
Yeah. So this is more specifically, you mean after the lockdown, right? During the COVID
Absolutely,
environment. Yeah.
yes. We're talking about everything during COVID times.
During COVID, yeah, yeah. So, of course, during the COVID times, we already worked in the digital space, but we had to rapidly adapt, because the physical operations were closed because of the lockdown, and all my clients had to quickly adapt. So, a few case studies where, like, one of my clients runs a childcare centers, many childcare centers. So, after 15-20 days, the kids were getting jittery at home, the parents are getting jittery, what to do. So we started online classrooms, where the teachers used to give at least 2 to 3 hours of continuous teaching, nursery rhymes, talking to them, and getting them into a routine. And I think that really helped all the children, and obviously it helped the parents as well, because remember, the parents were also working from home, so they were not on a holiday. So that create a good balance for them at home as well. There was another case study about a law firm, which again, I'm a consultant to them. And law being a traditional industry, lawyers have to have face-to-face consultations. So when this lockdown situation happened, they were just not ready for it, because something like this had never happened. It was not even plan B. So overnight we had to ramp up the website, have the appointment calendars, online appointment calendars for all their lawyers. They had a battery of 18 lawyers. So we had individual appointment calendars linked to payment and linked to online consultations. So that really helped them. So the lawyers were suddenly totally busy. Again, they were taking appointments online, they were giving 1 hour consultations online, and so it helped that the work survived and in fact thrived. So even after the lockdown is over, some clients are still comfortable with online consultations, and they're insisting to have some time out of their regular time to give online consultation.
So it's probably been an advantage to some
yeah,
extent.
actually, it has turned into an advantage. And so some clients who cannot travel. Look, at the end of the day, if you are in Auckland, you have a branch in Auckland, and you are stuck, clients from other cities may have heard your name, but they can't approach you because they may not be able to come. So when, the lawyers themselves get comfortable with that, then sky's the limit.
Right. On that note, I would like to ask Sukhanti Ghosh, his take on how a global firm with client success in over 120 countries is proactively tackling early warning systems.
Thank you, Rita. So I think the client or the particular client that Rita is actually talking about is a company we all know very, very well. It's a global social media firm. We work with them across probably around 15 markets at this point in time, 15 countries at this point in time, and what we do is we work with central crisis team. It's almost like a if you think about it, what we do is we map political risk across multiple countries for these guys. We map economic risk for them across these countries. What we're actually trying to do is to, sense where there may be trouble brewing around the corner. And if you really look at it, it's a rigorous process. There are rigorous metrics that basically not only rank the countries, but rank the kind of crises that could be emerging on the horizon. This is actually fed back to a central resource that reports directly into the worldwide chairman of the company. And if you really look at the way they go about it, as soon as something flags, one of their social media metrics, they come back to us and turn around and say, our metrics are behaving off track. The data is showing that there is a spike in activity in a particular market. Do you know what's going on? Or can you give us a deep dive in terms of what's happening or what is likely to happen, and whether this can literally blow up in our faces? So there is a lot of that. It's an extreme, and it's interesting because this organization keeps this function separate from the country operations, because it's almost like and again, Rita, you're going to smile when you hear this. It's almost like an objective ombudsman function, because you really want to keep it separate from the country operations that is focused on the business, is focused on numbers, is focused on eyeballs or usage. But this is an independent function that is actually a centralized risk function that is continually mapping what's happening out there. It's fascinating, and they could be monitoring a ton of things. So everything from hate speech to international cross-border violence, or communal issues that are rising, to, as I said, they could be legislation or policies that are severely or could severely impact their right to operate in a country. And they're continuously monitoring a lot of this, and they correlate it with the data that's coming into their system. It's a fascinating client assignment to work on, and I think we're privileged to be their partners, and have been for a very long time.
So, in your organization, what has happened is that the focus is on different continents and very, very different situations which are critical. Do you interact with one another sometimes, or are you trying to stay focused on your area of operations?
No, we work as a global team. So if you really look at it, we're on calls, we're on on Zoom. There were two new terms that I heard yesterday. One was, the pandemic has created Zoombies, right? And all of us are Zoombies because we're all zoomed out. And I found both of those terms, very interesting, because we're continually looking at things as a global team. Yes, we do operate on, and we do focus on our individual areas of expertise, and the areas of expertise could be functional or geographic or both. But the fact is, we work as seamless teams with teams on the ground, teams out of different countries, and teams in and across the US.
And the interesting thing is, I think that you are foreseeing crises rather than doing a lot of firefighting. I think that is important, also a very important lesson for us.
No, absolutely. And I think, clients need to, global clients especially, need to understand that, and everybody needs to understand, it's far better to deal with an issue or that's starting to emerge rather than, to deal with a full-fledged crisis. So it pays to be, proactive, and to keep monitoring and scanning and actually analyzing what's happening out there. because you really don't know where the next crisis is going to come from.
We'll get back to you, Sukhanti, because we have another question which we had posed to Gary on revisiting marketing strategies for SMEs. Can we play that now?
Sure.
I also
Yes.
want to ask you, because in this session we are dealing with revisiting marketing strategies
Yeah.
online in the
Yeah.
pandemic.
Yeah.
Of course, it happens that your work has been to provide strategic help to SMEs by using digital media and marketing tools. So, what has really changed for you if you've been using digital media all along?
So what has really changed is that we found that earlier digital marketing was more like a B grade strategy, not the prime strategy for marketing, and suddenly it became the be all and end all. And we had to refine our strategies for sales. So everyone realized that now the sales is dependent on just online marketing. So that kind of pressure also came, and in fact I am very happy with that, because then most of my clients also realize the potential of digital marketing and how it can actually drive sales, rather than just like it has to be, so it has to be type of thing.
So, you've done more Facebook marketing?
Yes, so we did Facebook marketing, we did Google ads as well. So for example, for law firms, we did like online consultancy available now kind of a thing. So that was the call to action, that you can now visit us online. So of course, for restaurants it was more about takeaways, home deliveries. Another new thing that started because of COVID, like in New Zealand, free food delivery to home is not a given concept. Like in India, it's a very popular concept. Here, it doesn't exist. And because of COVID, most of the restaurants started home delivery of food as well. So those things, innovative ideas had come, which combined with digital technologies really helped to boost sales of a lot of companies.
Right. So, taking on from what Gary has said, I'd like to pose the next question to Mahol Brahma. I'm not sure how much face to face marketing as such you've done, but there is a different interface I think that I'd like to ask you about, and that is on how your company has coped with internal communication. So, can you take us through what is unique about the systems in M Junction which have breached the pandemic? How are you managing to keep employees involved? Is there any attrition? Is there any need for a greater internal employee connect? Let's hear it from you.
Sure, Ritadi. That's a very interesting question. It was very interesting to hear Gary, because he's very right as far as the sales and the marketing perspective is concerned. For us also, there was a huge change towards digital and online as a reality, as opposed to a fear. Coming back to the internal audience, so image is all about keeping that reputation. So internal audience. So for an organization, you have to keep your image externally to your clients and other stakeholders and promoters and everybody. Internally, also, it is extremely important that your brand ambassadors, who are the people who are working in the company, you keep that image in the company as well, the reputation in the company as well, because this is your foundation. This is if this is not strong, the entire organization may fall. So when this happened, this was back in end March. The lockdown was announced and we started working from home. And the biggest challenge for us, for me, as the com said, was that how do I keep the morale up? Because everybody was frustrated, everybody was scared. What's happening? They don't know. I have never worked from home. Neither has most of my fellow colleagues. We were just managing somehow, and we thought it was a temporary thing. And then suddenly, from March, we are standing in December today. But the initial phase was the most challenging, Ritadi. The late March, the entire April, and the May was most challenging, wherein the job was to keep people inspired so as they still feel that they are still part of M Junction. And without even physically coming to office, we are all together working in a digital ecosystem wherein we are connected just the way we were during office hours. So what, one or two things that I started, something called MJ Fighters, So during this transition from office space to online at home, security is a very major concern for us. We are an e-commerce company, and security is a huge concern. We conduct e-auctions. So there are teams which worked for days and nights to ensure that these auctions are conducted from home and with the security intact, so that our image and our reputation is intact in the eyes of clients. And there is no disruption. It was business as usual. There was not a single day of disruption. Everything happened over weekends, during nights, and every team member who had contributed significantly, which is perhaps the entire company, and I'm grateful to all of my colleagues. So what we did is that we started doing stories on how that person or that team was able to take an extra step and help the company continue business as usual. So we started with a series called MJ Fighters. So we created graphics and all, and started sharing with everybody, and that picked up. And after 10 months, people are actually rooting for MJ Fighters, that when will you feature us. And it's such a wonderful thing that people are so happy to see what the fellow colleagues are doing, because in most of the times these stories don't get out. While there's a quarterly newsletter and all that, but these success stories, these sunshine stories in such dark times, especially during the initial days of COVID, was something that kept us together. And then there were addas, online adda session where there was a free-flowing discussion conducted by M Junction. So we took a few steps by which we ensured that this people, Junctionites, are together. There is a session that used to happen monthly, a physical session with the MD called Town Hall. So we converted that into an e-town hall. So for the first time, we had a virtual town hall. So somewhere or the other, there was one effort after the other to keep people still feel that we are connected, in a virtual world, in a virtual ecosystem, but we are connected. And that's how the entire thing was done. So we were very lucky. We didn't have to go through that process of retrenchment or anything of that sort. So we could maintain our business by the grace of God, and things are good, and things are getting much better now with the time changing. But the internal employees are very important to us, and I have been very lucky to have been serving them for such a long time.
So that means this has been a great opportunity to actually connect in a much better way than you would ever have
Right.
done if it had been
Right.
normal times. You would never have had, say, these story sessions or any of this kind of sharing that you have had, you have
Absolutely.
initiated. And people came forward readily, did they?
Right. They did. So with the help of
But I
HR,
want to
these sessions
understand
were conducted, and
this about e-auctions. Can you
right.
explain that to us? How does that happen
Yeah.
from
So
home?
we basically conduct e-auctions in steel, coal, and 2G spectrum, and oil fields and gas fields, and what have you. On tea, and we are building e-marketplaces of tea. So we launched our tea e-marketplace during the pandemic. So this was a first big step for us. So what happens is that when the auctions are conducted, there are dedicated auction rooms, physical auction rooms, in the office premise. Where there are very many securities, because the data during an auction is extremely sensitive and critical. And our reputation stands plans on how we are able to protect that data so that our clients are protected and their interests are protected. It was during this pandemic, during this March lockdown, that the long lockdown that first happened, that we had to, because we were not able to visit office and the auction control rooms, we had to migrate that entire process, and where all the auctioneers, all the junctionites who were doing auctions, they were remotely connected in a secure interface, and the auctions happened. And we were extremely happy that we were able to successfully conduct that auction. And incidentally, we got one of the biggest auctions which we hadn't got earlier, from the steel community. So that kept the business as usual going. But this transition, from a physical auction room to work from anywhere remote interface, was something we never thought we would ever do had the pandemic, had the lockdown never happened. So that was a huge transition for us.
Thanks a lot, Mahol. I think we will return briefly to Gary for another response to our question on how New Zealand has coped so brilliantly with the COVID numbers. I think it's in quite a unique space that way. So let's hear it from him. Talking about trust, let's get to another factor, which is the credibility factor. So one final question to you. Do you think you're talking about breaking down barriers? So can digital communication be used to break down barriers of nation so that solutions can be found across countries in a rapid manner, especially for companies that have international setups?
Yeah, definitely. Look, how digital communication can help is that it opens the doors. The first door that opens is through digital communication. Whether it's traditional email, or now we have these webinars, we have virtual meetings, conferences. We just cannot underestimate the power of having a virtual conference where you go, you have 100 companies which are presenting to you. They are online expos now, they are virtual expos which happen. You can actually go and visit those 100 stalls at your own time. And also imagine the time gap. For example, between India and New Zealand, there's a huge time gap. So when you're going across countries, you are even crossing those boundaries of time gaps. So I think it really opens the doors. It's cost effective when in today's world we all are talking about reducing operating costs and all that. So I think it's the first go-to for any, I think should be a part of the strategy. In fact, for international marketing and sales, I think it should be a very important strategy to give digital marketing and keep it on the top. And get it started. Once you meet the people, you can shortlist your clients, and then maybe you can schedule a visit to that country or to that state, and then have a physical meeting later on.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Gary Gupta, because that's what we are doing here at Engage for these couple of days. We've gone into virtual reality. So this seems to be the new norm.
Yes.
And I thank you very much for being part of our session.
Thank you so much. And thank you to you, and thank you to the Public Relations Society of India for having me, and all the other panelists, Mr. Ujjwal Chaudhary and other panelists. Thank you so much for giving me time.
Right. So since he has mentioned Professor Ujjwal Chaudhary, I would like to come back to him. Professor Ujjwal Chaudhary is in a space apart from the rest of us panelists, all of you, because the education sphere is one that he has straddled all along. Today, education is at a unique crossroads where learning online has become a massive challenge. Where do you see the future of real-time education, Professor Chaudhary?
Real-time education, if you are thinking in terms of physical face-to-face education, at the higher education level, at least, if not in very junior classes in schools, at the higher education level is going to be purely blended education. purely blended education, where a part of the education shall be delivered digitally and the other part physically. Now, which part? That depends on many factors. For example, since virtual studios and virtual labs are not very comfortable beyond the first 60% or 50% of their content, there is the need for hands-on working. So labs and studios will be physical. Group discussions and teamwork related initiatives will be physical. But a large part of understanding concepts will go digital. So there are four things that this pandemic has taught us about education. Four things: content creation, content delivery, learners engagement, learners evaluation. Content creation so far was in a physical mode, was basically talking about chalk and talk method, or showing a PowerPoint, or once in a while showing a video, and then talking, interacting, taking questions, answering. That was the basic approach. It is now going to a very different mode. Earlier we were talking about teachers, now we are talking about mentors. A teacher was a sage on the stage, talking the last word, speaking the last word on the subject. But a mentor is an aggregator and not a last word or sage on the stage, not speaking the last word. An aggregator who aggregates proprietary content with aggregated content from open sources. Proprietary content is all the content that he himself produces: PowerPoints, videos, podcasts, his own case studies, and all that. And the aggregated content is from various open sources, massive open courses we know, MOOCs we know. And and we have already done this in COVID. We have started doing this in COVID era even now. So there will be videos which are available open source in Vimeo or YouTube. There will be SlideShare power presentations. There will be case studies which are already available either for a small fee or free, completely free. And there will be many other such content, PDFs, books, and all that. And these links and these content will all be aggregated in a very concerted, sequential manner and placed it before the learner much before the actual interaction happens. Much before that happens, 5, 6, 10 days before. And that's flipped classroom. So the learners learn these things at their own time and pace, asynchronously, not together. And then either a digital synchronous class or a physical synchronous class will actually take those things up. And this will not be a sage on the stage speaking 35 minutes and the last 5 minutes are for the students. It won't be like that. It will be the learners asking questions, posing doubts. Maybe you can bring in a quiz or a debate at times. So this is content creation and content delivery in the new mechanism, new blended learning system. Similarly, I don't know about time. Can I go? I don't know. Can I go further or not? But learners' engagement.
Please go ahead. We want to hear more from you.
Learners' engagement and learners' evaluation will also change. Earlier, the engagement was, okay, there is a sage on the stage, there is an environment in the campus, and therefore, there are discipline, there are fine, penalty. So you could create a sort of an ambience of discipline which was not very much intrinsic. It was more imposed. But today you cannot do. In online learning, in blended learning, the learner has to be immersed. It has to be an immersive learning. And immersive learning can only come when the learner is genuinely interested in that subject. So the boys and the men will be separated now among the learners for a very long, very, very strong manner, in a very strong manner. And for the first time, the onus of learning is truly on the learner. We have been talking about that it shall be a learner-centric, it should be a learner-centric education. But this time it is truly, truly on the learner. And therefore, learner's engagement has to, even the mentor, I'm not using the word teacher, the mentor. The mentor also needs to understand that he has to engage the learner very creatively. Your loud voice, your high positioning, your big personality, and your track record of your degrees or experiences cannot be the only mechanisms of imposing a sort of discipline. And therefore, the learner, the mentor has to bring in, for example, videos, for example, Google Forms to judge opinions, or do a poll, or for example, infographics, for example, cartoons, for example, lot of visual elements, lot of audio elements, podcasts, lot of engaging elements, quiz, poll, survey of opinion, lot of opportunity for the learners to speak online synchronously or offline synchronously when they meet face to face. So this whole thing has to be an engaging process. And the other thing that has to be understood, there is no lifetime career perhaps going ahead. I mean, I was a journalist, I became an educator, I don't know what will happen tomorrow. But then this, those who are currently at 30s, in 30s or 20s, are surely going to have multiple careers in life. Almost 99% of them are going to have that. And therefore, there are many things that we'll do in careers which we have never learned on campus, which is even now true, but it will be truer tomorrow. Therefore, learning to learn, or concept of self-learning, has to be brought in. And self-learning, how do you search learning and get? That's another thing that's to be brought in. So learners engagement and self-learning, one. And the final thing, learners assessment. There cannot be a year ending or 6-month ending one mega examination of 3 hours where you write 33.5 pages and your marks are based on the number of pages that you write. It's not going to be anymore the same thing. So it has to be a blended method, continuous assessment, quizzes, home-based or remote-based open book examination where you cannot have questions which are Googleable, you cannot Google the answers, applied examinations, face-to-face or distant, analytical examinations, checking knowledge less and application more, simulated situations more. And there are many other mechanisms of evaluation, including the exams, field work, report on field and all. So a multifarious blended examination system will replace the current obscure, obsolete year-end mega examination system. So there's going to be these changes if you're talking of future, as you asked me about where is education moving ahead.
And do you think that what you've talked about, I think it sounds more like an ideal world where there will be a certain amount of volition on the part of a student to actually want to learn. This whole thing that you brought in about self-learning and about the assessments that will follow, also the open book system, which makes life easier for them to some extent. They don't have to actually commit to memory a lot of things. So how is this going to go forward? Say in your own university, in Adamas, for instance.
Fortunately, we get students from a particular class where digital access is more or less has already come in. So though we had initially problems in March, by May at least, the entire student community, 4,000 plus students, were already hooked onto our online learning. April itself, middle of April itself. The quality of digital access was different. There was connectivity issues, no doubt. But having said that, everyone had a laptop and a smartphone and an internet connection. So this itself is a luxury in India, by the way. The government and UNESCO statistics of the moment is 52% of the class 5 to post-graduation master students, 52% are completely out of education for the last 10 months. They are completely out of education because either they don't have a smartphone or a laptop or both, and even if one of these are there is no connectivity at all. So, and the remaining 48% are not all at ideal situation, at varying levels of connectivity and digital access. So the big challenge tomorrow before the students' volition is the digital access. And just like Roti Kapda, Makan, Shiksha and Swasth, these are 5 basic elements to lead a dignified life. Digital access is becoming the 6th basic element to lead a dignified life. And literacy tomorrow will not be the ability to sign your name, which was 20th century literacy. Literacy tomorrow is digital literacy. Literacy tomorrow is IT-based literacy. And therefore, digital access has to become a human right. It has to become the newest human right going ahead. Otherwise, this itself will be the reason of creating a huge number of youngsters completely out of the pool of knowledge. Because though you may learn many things without guidance or without digital means through books and many others, but the moment you have to apply that in real life, there is the need for digital access. The moment you have to update that, there is the need for digital access. So that's one part. The second part, volition. See, there is a large number of youngsters in this country who are genuinely interested to study, learn, and practice and evolve in life, but they have the resource challenge. And there is a large number again who get these things very easily, but they are not interested actually to go deep into it. So the boys and the men will be separated. This education system coming ahead, which is digital-based blended education, I would like to call it physical plus digital, phygital education, phygital model. People call it blended, people call it hybrid. This is going to really differentiate between genuinely and the non-genuinely seekers of knowledge. So, and it's not about just knowledge, it's more about application of knowledge. So, scholasticism will be on decline. And you will very soon
Right.
see that just appointment of university professors based only on published material and degrees, this is going to have a backlash. You will very soon see that gradually. Degree
Yes,
centricity
we'd
of
like to see that.
university.
We'd like to see
Degree,
more professors who have a genuine interest in teaching and not just in showing how many papers they have published and so on. And so this is the way we are looking at the path ahead, where students should actually be looking forward to careers, looking forward to thinking out of the box, looking forward to digitally taking their ideas forward. I think these are some of the positives again that we are looking at because of this whole pandemic, where they don't actually have to come to class and drag themselves physically to a place. Here, they actually have that advantage of being at home and yet being able to be able to study. The only downside being that there can be a whole lot of lazy scholars who probably put on their laptops and then they go to sleep.
yeah,
You know.
that's a
But
that's
that's
a
another matter. I think
there is
we'll
a
come
digital
back
fatigue.
to this again. Uh, Actually, when that particular interaction with Gary Gupta played, it was a different kind of question, and I wondered if there is yet another one which might come in now. I'm not very sure about the sequence. We had sequenced it in a certain way. Let us see if there's anything more that we can share. Can we have yet another question that I may have posed to Gary Gupta? Gary, New Zealand, of course, stands out uniquely in the COVID management situation. I think it's the most unique country in the world which has controlled COVID numbers completely. Now, would you say it is a triumph of the very innovative Prime Minister of yours, her communication skills to declare early lockdown? And has your own company played any part in sensitizing people online to stay safe?
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. All credit to our Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern. She's become the darling of the world, and
Yes.
and rightfully so, because she has really, taken on the leadership to drive the country forward. And of course, the credit goes not only to her. Her credit is that she was very clear in communication. She ticked all the right boxes. Definitely, she did that, and she took the call to put a lockdown early, which was, at that time, many people thought it may be too strict, but eventually we all see that it was good, because that really helped to, eliminate, the elimination strategy, as they call it, and that really worked in New Zealand. And today we are, bearing the fruit of that. We are having a normal life, whereas the whole world is still struggling with COVID. Now, but apart from that, I will definitely want to say that even Kiwis as such are very law-abiding, very trust worthy, and they so it all worked on a trust model. There was not like no hefty fines. It was more like, so Jacinda, the way she spoke, she appealed to that, that trusting Kiwis and the spirit of the trusting Kiwis to work along with each other to make it happen. And I think that credit goes to all the Kiwis, entire New Zealand, that they all came together to work and throw this COVID out.
Thank you. Now, I found that Gary Gupta has gone to another country and has established a certain credibility over there, which is in a country that is not his own. And I come back to Shukanti and would like to know how he has made his voice heard and his credibility established in the highly competitive environment of the United States. Coherent communication, or is it deep seated tactics? Is it ethical approaches? Give us an insight into this and how lockdown in US is a bigger challenge than in other parts of the world, Sukhanti.
Thank you very much. I think you've got lots of questions in there,
Yes, of
Ripati,
course. And I'd like you
and
to answer many of the questions. I think we have enough time, we have enough interest in what's happening out there with your company and with you personally. I think it's a global strategic solutions corporation or conglomerate. So there's plenty to hear and learn from you.
thank you. I think personally, I turn around and say, obviously, if you look at the US, you know, we are very, very, very vocal as a country here. You know, people are extremely vocal. People believe in the right to do what they believe is right, and they're legally protected. To do and say as they please, and that makes it far more challenging. What obviously makes it far more challenging as well is, despite the US having the best health systems in the world, the fact is that there are sharply divided beliefs between the two major political parties when it comes to their approach to individual freedom. Um, I think if you really look at it, to an extent, and I'm turning back the clock and thinking about when the pandemic struck, I don't think anybody really thought that the pandemic would continue as long as it did, and would impact people as much as it has. I think if you turn back the clock, Southeast Asia has been hit by several epidemics over the years. If you think about SARS, if you think about H1N1, if you think about MERS, Latin America's been hit and Africa's been hit with Zika and Ebola and various things. But I don't think in our lifetimes, and I'm pretty sure, we've never seen a pandemic at this scale. So it takes a long time to sort of come to terms with the fact that it is going to come to your shores. The belief is it's going to stay in South Asia, or going to stay in Southeast Asia, or in Africa, or somewhere else. So I think that that definitely caught everybody here by surprise. I think the fact that it's, again, if you look at us as a country, the United States is very clearly follows a federal structure, but even more so than in India, because obviously in India we've got 29 states, but the individual states don't necessarily act as individual countries. But to a much larger extent, we're looking at individual states acting with far more authority and far more individuality in the United States than in India. So it's harder to rein everybody in. It's harder to lay down a common law and say this is it. If you really look at it, given the social biases, the political biases, the governing biases, you actually see, and the incredulity of the pandemic running riot the way it has. You see varying degrees of response and varying degrees of responsiveness across the country. I think the other thing that is worth noting is obviously, if you look at data, or the use of data, or the reporting out of data, the US is very, very clear in terms of sharing its figures and sharing its data, which is why the numbers have been significant. There've been some comments made by certain people around the fact that if you test more, you will show more numbers, but that doesn't mean that the country has stopped testing or reduced testing. If anything, it has intensified testing, and more people are testing. Could more be done? Absolutely, right? And I think that's where you've got several very significant global foundations like Rockefeller Foundation that's actually picked up the thread, and they're turning around and saying, we want to create a national pandemic plan. We want to look at surveillance in a very significant manner. But to that extent, they are also present in India and doing a lot of work in India at this point in time around the pandemic response. So, I think if you really take a step back, I think, the role of civil society is to pick up the gaps, or to pick up when there may be gaps in a particular government response. And I think, we're seeing that very clearly. We're seeing at the same time, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this, and this is perhaps the first time in human history, we've seen medical research and work so quickly and so effectively. Science has come to the middle ground and come to the center of this pandemic very, very quickly. If you look at the way people have come together to try and when I say people, I mean people from around the world, researchers from around the world, academics from around the world, healthcare companies from around the world, biotech companies have come together to try and synthesize that knowledge and try and, take apart, the basic DNA of the virus and to create solutions, vaccines, and treatments in record-breaking speed. Vaccines typically would take 8 to 9 years to come to market, and we haven't crossed a year, from when this has really and truly become a pandemic, and we're already talking about vaccines being rolled out in multiple numbers, in multiple generations of technology. That is unprecedented. So I think if you look at it, the country's done a lot, in trying to facilitate this. There've been missions like Operation Warp Speed, where the government has put very significant amounts of money on the table to try and facilitate, the coming to market of such vaccines. There are global bodies like CEPI, which have actually come together again to work with global governments to raise funds to promote the development of vaccines. So if you really look at it, there's a lot that has happened, and is happening every day, every minute that we speak in terms of trying to counter this. So I think I could continue going on, because the fact is that, while there is so much happening, the fact is that, we as a company, for instance, we went into remote mode in March, in early March. And, we were very clear that we didn't want to put our employees, second. We were very quick to move to remote work. We were very quick to come out with regulations in terms of, return to work policies, where the entire emphasis of returning to work was very clearly passed on to the employee. The organization was very clear that there would be absolutely no reason for people to come back unless they wanted to come back and were comfortable to come back. To that extent, there were significant investments made in technology, very significant investments made in providing people with a very substantial allowance to ramp up their home offices, to work from home. If you really look at it, and much like Mahol was talking about, we've been having all hands meetings every second week, where the entire global organization gets together and talks for an hour and a half about key issues, and at the same time, key trends, key practices. We have a global health team, that comprises some of the best and the brightest global health professionals around the world, who've been actually advising companies, advising governments, in terms of pandemic preparedness, pandemic surveillance, pandemic response. So boards of companies, in terms of the same thing, we've been actually analyzing and helping companies, revise and relook at their crisis response to such pandemics. So there's a huge amount of work that's been happening, and equally, if you look at it, I think each of us as managers and leaders in our own domains and across our own teams have that responsibility to check in, with our people and with our teams, and make sure that they are equally comfortable. So to an extent, there's been a huge amount of work done in terms of coaching, as opposed to mentoring. There's been a huge amount of work done in the mentoring space and in facilitating learning, soft skills, even within the firm, in terms of how do we come to terms with the pandemic and the stress of the pandemic, the insecurities that each one of us faces around the pandemic. We've been very careful in terms of that, and what I'm pleased and proud to share is not only have we not seen a significant attrition. We've lost, nobody within the firm was lost because of the pandemic. And if anything, we've grown, both in terms of our people as well as, our business. As more and more corporate, yes, we did see a bit of a soft couple of months, but if anything, there are more and more global corporations, global foundations that are coming to us to work on global solutions around inclusive growth, around business continuity in times of the pandemic, in terms of managing through the pandemic. A lot of our work, for instance, was around helping companies keep their lights on, during the pandemic. And we're talking about large manufacturing companies, keeping them abreast of what's happening in various countries, keeping them abreast of what's happening in terms of return to work policies. We've launched, we've helped companies launch multi-$100 million manufacturing plants in India through the pandemic. We've helped large global e-commerce companies, some of the biggest in the world, continue to serve customers. We've been able to help multiple corporations, do what is right and stand by their people and stand by, their critical functions, where they are serving, global corporations in global markets. I think we've all learned through the pandemic. I think Ujjwal was extremely right in terms of turning around and saying paradigms have changed. And I think Mahol was really right in terms of saying, we've had to adopt and adapt to a new way of working. Will the world return to normal? Yeah. I doubt it. This is the new normal.
This is the new normal, and this is what all of you across the board have expressed. And I think the message from you, which also came through from Professor Ujjwal and from Mahol, is this technological upgradation that has had to take place. It's been for students, it has been for your employees across the board. And the other thing is keeping the lights on. I think this is a very, very good message that has to go on to employees, to clients, to students across the board. So I'm just wondering if Gary from New Zealand has any other message. Let us see. Talking about trust, let's get to another factor, which is the credibility factor. And how did you personally get acceptance and this credibility from your new client base? You've done a lot of early community events, many of them Bollywood oriented. Did this help in a good connect? And is this something that's continuing to help? Are you going to continue with online events or offline? Let's know that, because our whole session really is about how we can continue to do it through the virtual medium.
Yeah. So, look, as we had discussed earlier as well. This is getting credibility is, of course, an online. It's an ongoing journey. Sorry, not online. It's an ongoing journey, and so it's been 10 years. I've been operating in New Zealand, and of course, the initial, you just take any project that comes to you, and you do the best. And I think once you keep delivering, with perfection, with the best of your abilities, slowly that credibility factor increases. And of course, in my case, it has been a word of mouth. In fact, even today, I get my maximum clients through word of mouth. And therefore, yes, big ticket events like Bollywood events. I also do manage some gala nights, gala dinners, corporate events as well. So we do a mixed bag of all that. And all that collectively has definitely helped to put the profile of the company out. And New Zealand being small companies, your individual brand, your individual profile is totally married with your company profile. So you do have to keep working on that. And as you said, for credibility factors, you have to just keep delivering. It never ends.
That's very true. But you're powering on with digital in the case of running the India-New Zealand Business Council, which
Yeah.
actually needs a lot of real-time conferencing. How do you manage that?
Yeah, actually, that's a very interesting case study again. So I'm the secretary of the India New Zealand Business Council. And so it's a premier chamber of commerce, which promotes trade between India and New Zealand. So, of course, we have traditionally been into physical events, networking. We've had one annual summit, physical summit, where we used to get delegations from India, sometimes from FICCI, sometimes from CII, and etc. So those kind of international summits also we used to do. Now with COVID, again, I think it was something which became an opportunity actually out of our need to connect, and we have successfully done around 5 or 6 webinars this year, and I realized that our reach became much higher. So, we've done webinars with FICCI, CII, PhD chambers, and some other chambers as well. And so we are reaching out to more than 500 Indian companies in each webinar. And they are reaching out to a larger share of the Kiwi audiences as well. So I think the merit of online networking really helps because it breaks the barriers, the geographical barriers. And we are also seeing increasingly, even Indian companies are more comfortable doing virtual B2Bs and virtual buyer to seller meetings. So INZBC as a council is also facilitating a lot of that. We are working very closely with the Indian High Commission and the other chambers in India, and keep working on sector specific, buyer seller relationships, online meetings. So I think that's really holding ground. And I see that even after COVID goes, this will still stay, because there are huge advantages of this.
Mahol Brahma, this whole thing of online networking, I think you can throw a little more light on this, particularly because of the kind of company that you are that you're involved with.
Yeah, Ritadi, absolutely. And, I completely agree with Sukhanti that there has been a ramp up in terms of investment in setting up the IT infrastructure for everybody to be able to work from home, and as well as to manage the centralized infrastructure in cloud. So this, because of this, IT and technology setup that is there, uh, it also, Britari, I will just add another perspective or another facet to it, is that we were able to, transform the entire CSR activity that we were doing from online physical activity to somewhat physical but primarily remote teaching. So which, be it skill development or be it teaching of visually impaired students, training them, giving them mobile, moving them away from braille, which is our project, we were able to make an inroad in the West Bengal government. So it was a very credible effort that the government, even during the pandemic, helped us bring this project and start the project, which was a great breakthrough, from Chhattisgarh to here. And as far as the employee engagement is concerned, we converted the volunteering, which was previously physical, where you have to go to a place and do your volunteering activity. It turned remote. So the online remote working not only was limited to work, but also to the service that we were providing to the community. And the fact that the leadership allowed that service to continue without any interruption, even during the worst of the times, you know keeps volumes in terms of how the image is maintained in terms of the beneficiaries of the CSR activities that we conduct. So online has been a boon. The teachings that we have
Interrupt you for
learned
a
has been
minute.
a boon.
How do you actually reach out to the beneficiaries online? You know, we are not supposed to do a physical relationship with them,
Right, right,
a physical
right,
contact. How does
right.
that happen in CSR?
So what happens is that we train them in skill development, and we also train them in school students in computer education and English, and skill development for students who are graduates and masters, and not making them ready for a job. So this entire mode of teaching, through our partners, was converted into, as Ujjalda said, in a hybrid phygital form, wherein primarily the teaching was happening through the mobile phones which we have provided to the students. And then there were this gram in the village communities, there were these small setups that they had set with Wi-Fi, where the students, because the schools are closed, the government schools are closed, so they were sitting there together, and the teacher through the mobile is teaching all the students in a clustered format. And there was these new models which we never thought would come up. They suddenly come up, and community is helping. They are trying to figure out a way to help the students stay engaged, even though internet is an issue, even though reach is an issue. And so what Ujjwala said, we are kind of using in some way in executing our CSR activities. While the physical is the best, because that is where you actually interact with the beneficiaries and understand what is the real need. But this is the second best, and at least we are able to continue the CSR operations without any interruption. So the beneficiaries are not impacted.
Oh, that's fantastic. I had one last question of Gary. I wonder if it's still possible to play it before I go on to Professor Ujjwal Chaudhary. And that is, I had asked him about whether digital communication could be
Ritadi,
used to break down barriers of nation.
Ritadi,
Let's
if
see
you
if it's
could,
still
if
there.
you could ask, if you have a question for Sukhanti, if you could ask that first, because he has to drop off in next 10 minutes. He has
Absolutely.
another call. If you have any
Yes,
question, please ask him first.
I do actually, Ujjwal. I'm glad you brought in Shukanti because I think we've held on to him long enough, and he has to go off. So one last thing, Shukanti, that you've had a lot of experience in India with your previous company, and something amazing that you did with Vibrant Gujarat. Now, do you miss doing these kind of events in your new setup, or is today your priority trying to help companies to come to terms with some of the crises that they are facing, and therefore uh, that was another story, another time. But today it's a different thing that you're tackling, and it's a very important set of issues that uh, the various people in your group who are across the board controlling various countries they're trying to do. So I think I need a very quick response from you before we go on to Ujjwal Chaudhary, because we should be concluding this in another 5 minutes. So a couple of minutes to you.
And thank you, Utral. That was extremely gracious of you. Rita, just to provide you with a quick answer, um, no, I don't miss it, to be honest. I think if you really look at it, I think Vibrant Gujarat is something I'm extremely proud of. The work that we did at that time. I think if you really look at ASG and the kind of work that we're doing now, there are a number of areas which are very, very significant. You would have heard me talk about global health. We're fortunate to have uh, perhaps one of the best global health teams in the world. And these are people who built out health systems around the world. They built out Dubai Health City, for instance. They're all, trained physicians who have actually been at the cutting edge of global consulting in building out healthcare systems, in strengthening healthcare systems, in China, in Turkey, in Africa, in India, there is so much to be done, in education and workforce training, in health system strengthening, in a lot of these, in global sustainability. We're working with corporations that have built out $1 billion climate innovation fund and have promised to go net carbon neutral, so and carbon negative by 2030. We're actually fortunate to be working with these companies on real edge solutions, as well as building out these initiatives. One of the initiatives that we've worked with is helping create a platform where global corporations come to global multilateral funding institutions come together to provide for inclusive growth in emerging markets. So they're in the post-COVID era. So there are a ton of things that we're doing that are different, things that I'm especially proud of. I think I'm honored to be a part of ASG as much as I was delighted to be a part of APCO. So I only have great things to say about both organizations.
Thank you so much, Sukhanti, and thank you very much for being with us on this particular session. And I'd now like to turn to Professor Ujjwal Chaudhary, because Sukhanti was talking about inclusivity. And I'd just like to ask you that since you are Pro-Vice Chancellor of such an amazing, huge university, have you been looking at international tie-ups? Because a lot of students want to study abroad, but how will they do it? They might even send in their applications, but if they get accepted, what is the next way forward for them?
So,
How are you
Ujjwal,
looking at
before
mentoring such people?
Ujjwal, before you come in, can I just take the opportunity to thank thank both of you as terrific panelists, Gary Gupta and PRSI, for giving me this opportunity. It's been a pleasure, and I will drop off in a couple of minutes, but over to you, Ujjwal.
Thank you, Sukhanti.
Thank you so much, Sukhanti.
Thanks, Sukhanti.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure.
Coming back to your thing, since the topic of this session was PR during COVID times, so I will begin the answer to your question referring to not to future, because your last question was about future, but to what we could do in international relations in the COVID period, this last 10 months. So we have around 82 international students. Basically, they are South Asian students from Bangladesh, Nepal, and Sri Lanka, and a few from Bhutan as well. So we kept in touch with them, only the international students, apart from the online classes, we kept in touch with them online. And there were special, national days celebrated of Bangladesh, of Sri Lanka, of Bhutan online. We did that. So that was one way of getting in, keeping the international students who are already studying here connected and feel at home, even from a distance. The other point was we just now did International Students Conference, in which 158 graduating and postgraduate and even PhD students from 26 universities of 16 countries participated. And it was quite a successful one, well reported in the media as well. So this was another example, another way of taking your reputation through the digital means, through larger audiences earlier. We have MOUs with 52 universities. Until 2019, 44 of them, between 18 and 19, have sent their delegations. Our students have also gone, for exchange programs to some 16, 17 of them. But then this year, as you understand, there could not be a physical movement. There could not be a physical, movement going there or organizing or welcoming them. So that's one side. The other side I wanted to say, during the COVID times, an educational institute also has to find, apart from their regular work of teaching, delivery of education, practical doubt clearing, and getting in touch with the students on digital platform, it also has to find some unique ways of creating a good reputation or good conversation around the brand. So basically today it's about digital conversations around the brand. So what we did in our case, and I must congratulate our honorable chancellor, Professor Shamit Ray, for that. He conceived, he was the first owner, or rather, if I say chancellor of a university in this country, of a non-medical university, which declared the campus as a quarantine center in 20th of March, on 20th of March. And from April 1, we gave a large part of our campus constructed space to create a 1,000 bed quarantine center. The government did not need 1,000 finally. They used around 350 plus beds. That's fine. And it continued till July first week. And there were from the family members of COVID infected people to the migrant laborers who came back from different parts of the country back here. Many people were put for 14 days each one as a quarantine center. Some of them tested positive, were sent also to the hospitals, designated hospitals. The government brought its own mechanism, machinery of nurses, doctors, and everything. There was a camp of the nurses and doctors on campus. The entire nation's media and some global media covered it, and this was completely earned media, if you can call it in your language of PR, earned media. In the sense there was no money spent for media here. People just head over heels they fell to cover this story, because this was a non-medical university doing a medical mission in times of a pandemic. So you need to find such mechanisms also. One more thing I'd like to say: there is one teacher, Professor Subrata Pati, of history, who left because our college university campus was closed on 15th of March due to the chief minister's decision. And he immediately went, because he's a bachelor, went to his parents who are in distant Bakura, interior place of Bakura. And then there was the national lockdown. It continued. So he continued taking classes because there was no connectivity at his place. Continued taking classes from only one spot nearest to his house, which was a treetop. It became a viral story. More than million hits. I think you all know about that story. He created a platform on a tree from where he was getting connectivity on his smartphone, and he connected through Hotstar the laptop. He created a sort of a cover on his head with old umbrellas, and he sat there for 6 hours a day for 3 months. And these were summer months, as you know. May, June, July, these were summer months, till the rains came, because he couldn't do it during the rains. And he continued doing the classes in spite of such. That became such a viral story. Now you need to really, consciously or unconsciously, with commitment, with missionary zeal, you have to find ways and means of connecting to people in a crisis. Sometimes your work may not be very well planned, but it's okay. The university closed on 15th. We were instructed to go online from 16th. On 17th morning, 9 a.m. we started online, and we experimented with Zoom, WebEx, everything. Finally settled with MS Teams by April end. And initially we were committing mistakes. We were doing whatever we do offline, we were doing online. Now we know what is massive online open courses and how to use them. How do you create proprietary content? These things I've already spoken in my last round of discussion. So now we know how to create content.
Absolutely.
So we learned it, and there's no harm in learning and growing.
We have to
Same for
continue
international.
learning. Absolutely. Thank you, Ujjwal, because I think we've come to the end of this session. I think we are already over by about 5 minutes. So that is why I would love to go on to here, but I think these were very, very valid points. The whole thing of adaptability to a situation is what
Right.
we're looking
Adaptability.
at. Better digitization, better humanization of our approach. There are so many things. Of course, wonderful sunshine stories like you've told us, and like Mahol is also continuing in his organization and in his book also on sunshine stories. So that's what we need to do. We need to have an optimistic approach to this whole thing of managing reputation, building our brands, and continue to be working in our spaces, but continue to be growing and not be cowed down by what is physically has been a barrier, and yet it is no longer a barrier. I think it has proved that there are
Got it.
great opportunities to be grabbed and to go ahead. So on that note, I would like to thank you and Mahol Brahma, Gary Gupta, if he's still around, but of course it was all recorded. And we have already thanked Sukhanti, the Public Relations Society of India, Kolkata chapter. Shomujit has been a real sheet anchor for this whole engaged
Right.
project.
Manoj.
Right now,
Absolutely,
he is
absolutely.
dealing with his own personal crisis at the moment, right when we speak. So you can imagine how he has put the whole thing on auto mode, and we are continuing to do what we are doing. So I hope the next couple of days also goes well for all of us to
Rita
continue.
Di, Rita Di, I should thank you on behalf of everyone. You are almost like a mother figure to every communication professional here. For last 20 to 30 years, you have been grooming people, you have been supporting people, training them. Initially, I mean, you have been also consulting alongside teaching. I really thank you. It's not a you scratch my back, I scratch my back. I really tell it from the core of my heart. I really tell it from the core of my heart. I've been seeing you from my symbiosis times. That's quite 22 years almost. I've been seeing you doing what you are doing. You have really you and late Kishorda as well devoted your lives to communication field and development of communication in this part of the country where more actions are required. And undoubtedly, e-engage with 9 years of running, and the 10th year should be a mega year next year.
Right,
Has
right.
been doing a fabulous work. Thank you very much. It has been a
So,
fabulous learning experience.
thank you, Ujjwala, and I completely back Ujjwala on Ritadi. She's been a North Star for us, all the communicators, and thanks to Shomoda for
Yes.
support and for his leadership, and thanks to PRSI Kolkata chapter. We are very proud members of that fraternity, and we wish all the success to E-Engage. It's a heart and soul of the entire team has gone into it, and it shows. So thank you for having me, Ujjwala. Thank you for having me, Ritadi. It was such a beautiful
Mahul,
discussion.
Mahul, I will also add salute to the operational leadership and excellence of Secretary Chitralekha Banerjee and her
Right,
team of
right.
interns, and also the other members of the EC Executive Committee for sure,
Absolutely.
and a
Cheers to all of them. Yeah.
fabulous technological support from Mr. Samir Mukherjee and his VR Academy. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It is, a brilliant team and a brilliant work by a brilliant team. So, kudos.
There were more than 1,000 concurrent viewers for this program. I checked out
Wow.
in Facebook and YouTube
That's
together.
good.
Okay.
I had
Okay.
my
Wow.
personal support team with Onik over here so that nothing would go wrong when this whole uh,
Right.
uh,
Right. Right.
session was taking place. So there you are. They had everything covered, from end
Wonderful.
to end.
Wonderful.
So
Wonderful.
let's be self-congratulatory and let's also move on to the
And
next
and,
few days.
and, and thanks to the audience, a 2,000 plus audience, it's amazing. It's just a mind blowing thing. So thank you for being patient, and I hope it was useful what we said. Take care.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye
Bye.
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 Academy's University. Pursue excellence.